The day I found out my dad wasn't who I thought he was. I always thought my dad was the quiet type, the kind of man who worked, came home, watched TV, and went to bed without much fuss. Growing up, I used to think he was just boring. No wild stories, no adventures, nothing. Last month, I was helping my mom clean out the attic after we decided to renovate. She told me to go through an old box that had some of my dad's stuff in it. I opened it, expecting dusty trophies or work papers, but instead, I found a stack of letters and a small photo album. The first photo I pulled out nearly made me drop it. It was my dad younger, smiling, wearing a military uniform I didn't recognize, standing next to people in what looked like a desert camp. I had no idea he was ever in the military. When I asked my mom, she froze for a second before sighing. Apparently, before he met her, he had spent 3 years volunteering as a field medic in a conflict zone overseas. He never told anyone, not even me. She said he came back different, quieter, more serious. He'd seen too much and didn't want that part of his life to define him. That night, I asked him about it. He just smiled softly and said, "Some stories are better lived than told." Then he showed me a small scar on his arm and said, "That's why I always told you to be kind, because you never know what someone's been through." I don't know why, but that hit me hard. I used to think he was boring. Now, I realize he was just peaceful. A man who'd already lived a lifetime before I was even born. I hugged him that night. The kind of hug you don't plan, it just happens when you finally understand something about someone you've loved your whole life. Thought my dad was just a quiet guy. Found out he was a volunteer medic in a war zone before I was born. Learned that some heroes don't talk about what they've done, they just live quietly, carrying their stories inside them. Just moved into our new house. Now I think it's haunted. I moved into a remodeled duplex back in July 2025. Everything was fine at first, but lately, we've been hearing random banging and scratching toward the back of the house, near my room. At first, we thought it was our neighbor or his dog, but it kept happening even when he was out of town. One night it was so loud that my roommate thought someone was actually banging on our back door. It wasn't every night, just random enough that we brushed it off, until other weird things started happening. The bathroom cabinet door, same one near my room, keeps opening by itself. I assumed it was a bad hinge or one of my roommates, but after asking around, everyone swore they weren't touching it, and they'd noticed it open too. Then, I started noticing my closet door open multiple times after coming home, even though I always keep it shut. It has a knob you have to fully turn to open, and I'm super careful because my cat used to pee in closets. We chalked it up to the house being old, until 2 weeks ago. We had a party and were all hanging out on the patio. One of my friends brought her boyfriend. It was his first time meeting us and his first time at the house, so he had zero context about any of the weird stuff going on. He went inside to use the bathroom, the same one with the cabinet, and later that night, he told his girlfriend that when he came out, he heard loud banging from down the hall, near my room, and thought we were messing with him. Then he said that out of the corner of his eye, he saw a shadowy figure about 5 foot tall, like a face peeking out from my bedroom doorway before darting inside. Except my bedroom door was closed, and everyone was still outside. Everything seems to center around my room, which apparently used to be a child's bedroom before the remodel. And then there's my cat. Ever since we moved in, she's been peeing on my bed 1 to 2 times a week, something she's never done before. She's been tested for UTIs, her blood work is normal, and my vet said it could be stress-related. Now that I think about it, it started around the same time as the banging and scratching. Lately, she's also been sleeping right next to me on the bed every night, which is unusual because she's never been cuddly or liked sleeping beside me before. At this point, it feels like more than just old house noises. Everything keeps happening near my room, and I'm honestly starting to wonder if something's attached to this part of the house. At this point, we're considering saging the house or something. Solo camping. This story took place in southwest England. My dad used to tell me stories about how he would roam off onto the moors and down the coastline of Dorset and Devon and end up bivvying or camping wherever he found himself at night time. He once tied himself to a rock because he was scared of sleepwalking off the edge of a cliff. Because I was bored one summer, I decided to follow in his footsteps and have a go at camping out on the moors for a few nights by myself. The first night passed uneventfully. I was tired from walking all day and just hit the hay. The next day I walked further on into the northern part of the moor. It was overcast and chilly. Around late afternoon I found a low, mossy stone wall partially encircling some scrubby trees and decided to pitch my tent in there. I spent the evening poking around the vicinity, finding traces of wall and little cerns dotted about. There was also a standing stone on which coins and hair clips had been placed. Occasionally you can find these offerings where there are stone circles. People will place small items on and around the stones, presumably as offerings, or for another purpose I am not aware of. I looked around for signs that this particular stone formed part of a stone circle but could find none. It was just a stone, roughly 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide, standing there roughly 20 feet from my tent. After my dinner I crawled into my sleeping bag and zipped myself up for the night. I read by torchlight for a few hours, and then at about 11 I decided to turn in. I had been lying in the dark for a short time when I became aware of a light tread outside the tent. Distinct footsteps. Hard to tell how far away or what. It could be a deer, I thought, or a sheep, even a pony. But there was something about the pattern of the steps that felt different. It sounded like someone strolling through the woods nearby. Not in a hurry, but not trepidatious either. I lay listening for a time, very tense, trying to decide what to do. I think that is the stillest I have ever been. After a time they stopped. I slowly moved towards the door, intending to reassure myself with a glance outside. I expected to see the white bottom of a deer retreating through the trees. I turned on my torch, unzipped my door enough to fit my head and torch though, and shone the beam into the blackness. What I saw I struggled to comprehend. Near the tree line, caught in the beam of my torch, I saw a grey horse. It was facing me. I could only see the front of its head and 2 forefeet. To me it seemed enormous. It must have been about 10 feet away. I flinched back into my tent convulsively, weirdly repulsed by the wrongness of the horse standing outside. A few seconds later I peered out again. I shone my torch around the clearing and into the woods and could see no trace of it anywhere. I glanced away for just seconds, and by the time I looked again it had vanished. At the time I was struck by how nightmarish the horse seemed to me. It had a wrongness about it that I still struggled to place. The grey of it was too flat. From my perspective it looked almost two-dimensional. I didn't see it move at all. I rounded off my evening by sitting up in my sleeping bag with my teeth chattering. I stayed awake most of the night and caught a bit of sleep around dawn. After that I woke up, packed up and walked off. My son keeps talking to the man in the wall and I'm starting to hear things too haunted house. Okay, so this is gonna sound insane, but I need to get this out somewhere because my wife thinks I'm losing it. We moved into this house about 4 months ago. Nothing fancy, built in the 70s. Kinda outdated, but the price was right. Our son is 3, just started talking in full sentences recently. About a month after we moved in, he started this thing where he'd stand in the hallway outside his room and just talk. At first we thought imaginary friend, whatever, kids do that. But he'd always face the same spot on the wall. Always. This one section between his room and the bathroom. My wife asked him once who he was talking to and he goes, the man in the wall. She laughed it off. I did too. But then like 2 weeks ago I'm up at 2 a.m. getting water and I hear it. This low hum. Not like electrical. More like someone humming a tune. I stood in that exact hallway spot and it got louder. I put my ear to the wall and I swear it sounded like it was coming from inside the drywall. I checked the attic. Nothing. Checked for pipes. Nothing runs through that wall. Yesterday my son told my wife the man says Daddy hears him now too. We never told him I heard anything. I don't know what to do here. I'm not superstitious or anything, but this whole thing is freaking me out low-key. My wife wants to get the wall checked, but I'm worried what we'll find. Or won't find. Has anyone experienced something like this? I'm trying to convince myself there's a logical explanation, but I'm running out of ideas. I haven't seen a boy in 4 years. So, why is my heart about to explode? Horror. Is it because you saw a boy? I was having a heart attack, they told me. The first thing the medic asked me when I was wheeled into the ambulance, my heart pounding through my chest at 170 beats per minute, was, "Did you talk to a boy?" I almost laughed in her face. But then I saw her wide, concerned eyes through plastic protection, and shook my head instead. How could I have spoken to a boy? I hadn't seen one since I was 12, when half of the nation's teenagers were wiped out through hormones. I saw it for myself. I was 11, enjoying a chocolate milkshake in McDonald's for my friend's birthday. We all began to sing happy birthday, but I was distracted by a BA bump sound behind me. BA bump, BA bump, BA bump. So, I sang louder. Halfway through, a splat sent us into hysterics. The teenage boy and girl sitting behind us had exploded into vivid streaks of bright red dripping from the ceiling. I still remember the single spot of scarlet on my bright pink shoes. Mom immediately came to pick me up, but when she dragged me outside, we ran straight into panicked teenagers imploding right in front of me. I watched a blonde girl, around 14, running toward me. Like I could help her. Her frantic eyes and parted lips will never leave my mind. I blinked, and she was running down my face in thick rivulets, gluing my eyelashes shut, a vivid smear of scarlet I couldn't blink away. The virus, according to panicked news reporters on TV, was hormone-based, triggered by puberty, and it was quickly taking out half of the population. Schools closed. Even mine, when a 13-year-old had apparently succumbed. The government didn't know what to do with the rest of us. Preteens. They tried drugging us, but kids were still exploding. So, when I was 13, I was sent to an all-girl compound. They were built on their side of town. Boys on one side, and girls on the other. I had spent the last 4 years at a labor camp disguised as a rehabilitation compound. Despite their attempts at separating us, however, kids were still dying. It really was a mystery to them. My heart rate was at 170 because I had been on my feet for 12 hours straight. That's what I told them, at least, as they strapped me to a bed, wheeling me through plastic sheeting. A young-looking nurse checked my heat rate, her eyes widening. The nurse was maybe 5 years older than me, which made her a teenager when this started, and part of the 1% that made it. I wondered how she survived. Jenny. She took a reasonable step back. The nurse was nicer than the others. Sweetie, your BPM is very high, she said softly. You know what that means. I didn't flinch when she already started laying down plastic sheeting. I'm going to die, I whispered. Is there anything that could have triggered this? She asked, injecting me with what I guessed were beta blockers. I heard they were a last resort. Have you? She leaned in close, lowering her voice. Jenny, have you seen or spoken to a boy? I bit my tongue, staring down at my camp uniform. No, I whispered, and on the screen next to me, my heart spiked. I could see the dizzying blur of red lights flashing on the monitor. The nurse sighed. She didn't speak, only rubbed my arm reassuringly. If you're still here when I come back from my break, we are going to talk. That was the response I expected. I was already in the danger zone. The nurse left, and I groaned, dropping my head onto the pitiful pillow. Are you about to pop too? The voice startled me. I wasn't alone inside the quarantine ward. Over here. The voice laughed, and I lifted my head. Opposite me, a ponytail brunette sat cross-legged on an observation bed. She was wearing a plastic poncho. I took one look at her, and burst out laughing. She scowled, before cracking, lips splitting into a smile. Do I look stupid? I nodded, and my monitor spiked again. Well, that's not good, the girl leaned over. You're like, literally doomed. She tilted her head, raising a brow. Did you see a boy? She mocked the nurse's voice, giggling. Her smile was contagious. My monitor started screeching, and I could hear it again. BA bump, BA bump, BA bump. But this time it was my own heartbeat. In the corner of my eye, it was climbing, a scribbly red zigzag. 190. 210. 230. What's your name? The girl asked. 300. I was going into cardiac arrest, my breath shuddering, but I was smiling. Somehow. Jenny. I said. I wasn't sure how to explain it wasn't because I saw a boy. My heart started pounding because a girl in my dorm smiled at me. It was getting warmer. But nice warm. Heat rising. Kind of like swimming under a blistering sun. BA bump. BA bump. BA bump. I smiled at the girl and closed my eyes. I'm Jenny. AO for breaking up with my girlfriend over this red heart ## relationship. My girlfriend and me were together for 2 years and lived together since a little more than a year. About 6 months ago she turned really cold and weird and treated me like shit for about 1 to 2 months. Then one day she thought I'm not in the same room and I walked by behind her and randomly looked at her phone. I saw her texting with a guy that I don't know and she gets scared out of her life and I confront her about it. She said it's just a friend that she's texting with since 2 months, which I thought is really weird. BC, why didn't you just tell me if it's a friend? I asked her to show me the chat to make sure they're really just friends, but she said they talked about private things and I'd be invading her privacy, but that she swears in her mom's life that it wasn't anything inappropriate. Anyways, I didn't want it to be true because I loved her too much, so I didn't even try to find out more. Then for the last 4 to 5 months she became the most caring girlfriend in the whole world, and I feel it's genuine. Well, yesterday I found out that all they were talking about for 2 months is how bad she wants to fuck him and all sexual stuff you could possibly imagine, and I instantly told her that she should pack her things and leave as soon as possible. She kept denying for hours, which is crazy that she kept lying even though I knew, but after a few hours of her crying, even though she's the one who did this, and begging me to stay with her and saying that it was 5 months ago and she'll never do it again, I still said no and that she should leave. How could I ever trust someone that lied to my face 1,000,000 times in just a few months without even showing any form of guilt? Is this karma? Non-fiction. My 36-foot ex-husband, 38 and I split up a couple years ago when I found out that I was going blind. He admitted he was planning to leave me when I became too disabled to work because it would be too depressing. I was not interested in waiting for that. I am not legally blind yet. I can still work, drive, read Reddit, etc. But the clock is ticking. I don't know why me being trans was not a deal breaker for him, but blindness is. Either way, he's not my problem anymore. X and I have an adopted kid, Adam, fake name, 23 who was living with the ex-husband after I left because he, understandably, didn't want to move back to Texas with me. We took him in when he was an older teenager, so he is not that much younger than me. Our relationship is more like a favorite nephew-uncle, but he knows that I am always in his corner. About 5 to 6 years ago, Adam fell madly in love with a girl, Betty, 23 MTF. He bought a ring and was going to propose to her, but then found out she was cheating on him. He was heartbroken and became suicidal, but gradually recovered. However, for some reason he decided that he and Betty were going to be best friends now. He has always known my very low opinion on this. Betty proceeded to sow her wild oats and acquired HIV, which she confided to her best friend, Adam. Like the good guy he is, he respected her privacy and did not spread that information. She has refused all treatments because it makes her feel like a sick person. Betty was living out of state until recently, and decided to visit Adam for his birthday not long after X and I split up. I'm not sure what sparked the premonition, but as soon as he learned she was coming, Adam told both Betty and ex-husband that if they slept with each other they were dead to him. Well, cue a very upset phone call one night when Adam discovered that they were hooking up and are now a couple. When he confronted them about it, Betty was very condescending, and X literally said, "Guess I'm built different, because I don't see what's wrong with it." Even if we ignore the gross pseudo-incest relationship dynamic, the age gap is still very ick. Adam tells X about Betty's diagnosis, which she did not disclose to X, not illegal in their state, and X accused Adam of lying because he doesn't want ex-husband to be happy. X and Betty moved in together pretty quickly after. Betty and ex-husband had faded to the back of my mind until I got a call from Adam a few days ago. Guess who tested positive for HIV? Yep, ex-husband. He is shocked. I'm sure he's worried his loved ones will leave him like he left his grandma for developing dementia and me for going blind. Asterisk edited to use fake names rather than letters for clarity. The confession he never meant to make personal experience. 2 months ago, I discovered my boyfriend's fatal flaw. He can't keep a secret to save his life. Literally. It started small. He came home one night and asked, if someone hypothetically needed to disappear for a while, would you prefer the city or the countryside? I laughed it off, thinking it was one of his strange thought experiments. But then, a few days later, I found a locked box in the freezer with a sticky note. Do not open until it's safe. Safe from what? He brushed it off, said it was just a prank, but his hands were shaking. Then came the drive. We were heading to dinner when he muttered, almost to himself, I just hope they don't find the phone before midnight. When I asked what phone, he froze, then whispered, pretend you didn't hear that. By the time we reached the restaurant, police sirens were echoing down our street. That was the night I learned two things. My boyfriend can't keep a secret. Some secrets should never be told. My boyfriend and his fangs. November 12th, 2025. It is now 2 weeks after Halloween, and he still hasn't taken them off. I'm not sure what to do, or if I need to do anything. After all, he's just harmlessly enjoying the costume. He didn't say he's a vampire, or that he identifies as a vampire, but he won't take the fangs off. It must be some psychological thing. Putting them in for the Halloween party unlocked a core memory of his mother pulling on his baby teeth. I looked over at my boyfriend, seated on the couch, fiddling with his controller. I love him very much, and want to help him. But it doesn't look like he needs my help. He sensed me looking at him, as he turned and smiled at me. The fangs reached out over his lower lip. Hey babe, going to bed soon? So innocuous. The fangs grated against his lip. I felt uneasy. How did those damn things stay on so long, held by dollar store glue? I asked him what I had already asked a few times since the Halloween party. How do you even brush your teeth with those things in? They must have become a bit wobbly by now. He kept smiling. Nah babe, that glue, it's amazing. It must be the attention. He's a nice guy, perhaps a bit beige. He didn't even dress all out for the Halloween party, just popped in the dollar store fangs and put on a couple of my chains over his regular grey t-shirt and jeans. But even before we went to the party, I saw him staring at himself in the mirror, pulling his lips back, touching the tips with his tongue. Afterwards, he mentioned he would keep them in a bit longer. I didn't care then. Then on Monday morning, fangs still firmly in place, he said he'd keep them on for the office, for a laugh. I was busy and it wasn't until the next day that I noticed the fangs were still in. Babe, don't they fall off or something? I had asked. He ran his tongue over them. Nah babe, the glue's holding really well. They're not even wobbly. I had shrugged, mentally or physically, I can't remember. Later I asked, what did your colleagues say about the fangs? Oh, they were cool babe, we had a laugh. And then I asked outright, are you going to take them out? His smile stretched even wider, and the fangs reached down below his lower lip. I had not noticed how long they were. What was that? His tongue reached and flicked away a glistening scarlet drop. I had a flashback of him that first night, looking at himself in the mirror. Could I see his reflection in the mirror? I couldn't remember. Nah, I really like how they feel babe. He looked away. I walked back to the kitchen, and without understanding why, my hands clutched a steak knife. 115. I got drunk, texted my crush and I'm in. Romance. 19F. Don't discriminate when it comes to crushes. I've liked variety. Age, race, ethnicity, body type, don't matter. If I find you attractive, I'm in that. Anyways, my friends came over last night, 4 of us, and let's say we had permission to party in my room. I was the last one awake. I believe. But the video footage is literally proof of me emoting on my friends while they're asleep or trying not to throw up. Phew. Not the point. I went to basic training last year, and I gained a crush on someone in my company, but of course, never made anything official. This is a 30-years-old, white man, taller than me, looks like he enjoys camping, and he's calm. Introverted. We would literally talk on the bus whenever we went to religious services, and yeah, either way he looked at me. He did NAWT like talking to other people, I promise. We was annoyed when others approached him. But me. I was in that. When I got his socials, I had to work up to courage to ask him, got my friend to go with me, and I literally giggled and ran after he gave it to me loudly crying face. This morning, after waking up with this slight hangover, I had the courage to text him, sorry if this bothers your day, but I have a question, what's the youngest age you date? He basically explains that 24 is the initial age, but if he feels that someone is mature enough, he might go 21. So, when I turn 21, what tray the chances? He says that the chances are high and that he'd oft need to get to know me more, and then said that he does think that I'm very beautiful. I absolutely geeked TF out. Don't know what to respond with grinning face. I sent a fucking sticker of Anthony Mackie when he was posing during an interview. He laughs and continues the conversation. Oh my gosh, I love this, amen, God bless another day, another breath, another slay, yes, his active duty and MNG. But I'm excited to see how this plays out. I just wanted to share. Attempt at homophobia backfired spectacularly, instant karma. This happened a long while ago while I was at work, and I didn't get the full story until IDK, later that night or the next day. It's been long enough I don't remember. My partner reminded me of this story recently, and I've been lurking around here, so figured someone might get a good laugh out of it. I worked at a fairly popular student bar. My partner was a regular there. We're both dudes. I was fairly early in my transition at the time, like maybe a few months on T, and while I was usually read as a guy, I was consistently perceived as very feminine. On that particular evening, my partner looked like a generic dude bro. So my partner was waiting at the bar, not quite at the bar yet but fairly close. Unprompted, for whatever reason, this punter next to him turns to him, gestures towards me, and says something along the lines of, well, he's definitely a poofter. Partner comes straight back with, yeah, that's my boyfriend. The guy starts making incredulous noises, all like, nah, there's no way, you're having me on. So partner decides to prove a point, which is where I get dragged into it. My partner calls out, hey Genra, points to the guy. This guy just called you a poofter. I just look at him nonplussed and say, okay? And then carry on because holy fuck, it's busy, I don't have time for this shit. Apparently the guy looked absolutely mortified and apologized a few times. Hopefully he learned a lesson about not assuming random people will be on board with your homophobic bullshit. Also apologies if this is the wrong flair, I don't know what I'm doing. This story is pretty mild in the grand scheme of things and I'm not quite sure which flair fits.